All right. Good morning, good afternoon. It's that kind of day. To the DMZ America podcast number 178, if you can believe it,
Wow.
for November 15th, 2024, the year of our Lord. Coming to you from the left, cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I hate that he means that sarcastically or ironically. But anyway, I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right. What a week. This has just been stunning. We're going to go do a deep dive, as we are wont to do, and have a historical context that have there been shittier appointments to the president's cabinet? Maybe. Although this is this batch that has been presented to us is so unqualified, so bottom of the barrel, so horrific. I mean, listen, I remember when Reagan was building his cabinet back in the 1981, and it was getting a lot of criticism. Those guys would be the friggin' gold standard compared to these people. Gaetz, who they're trying to now, I don't know if you heard the breaking news, but Speaker of the House has just said that he wants the committee not to issue the findings of whether or not he, what's the word I'm looking for, Ted? Diddles little girls?
Raped children?
Well, rape's a rough word. I mean, if a 12-year-old can give consent.
Yeah, I think he was accused of fucking a 17-year-old.
Yeah, I exaggerate, of course, because that's part of our job. But yeah, he not just that, but he was also being investigated for human trafficking. I mean, this is a guy who's going to be potentially the chief law enforcement officer of the nation, who has no experience doing it, by the way, no administrative experience. He's a congressman, and that happens. They elevate Congress people to the cabinet. But not just him, RFK, who, brainworm Bobby, as we like to call him, head of the Health and Human Services. I mean, all of this, Ted. I mean, I'm dying to know your take, because you and I have not spoken since some of this started to take place. We had a conversation when it was just starting to break with our friend Ben Sargent, the editorial cartoonist there at the Texas Observer. But you and I haven't really talked in the last couple of days since these have come out.
We have not.
Head of our of Americans of the United States, the greatest country on the planet, our intelligence agency is in the hand of the governor of South Dakota, who has, say it with me, kids, zero, and I mean zero experience in intelligence.
However, she does have the intelligence to be somewhat attractive.
Oh, she's very attractive. That seems to be a lot of the appointments are, the defense, the Secretary of
Tulsi
Defense.
Gabbard is hot.
She's become hot. She has, as she's become a Trumpy. I mean, that seems to be, a lot of plastic, a lot of, filler, a lot of Bondo. But the head of, the proposed head of, oh my gosh, of defense. He's a host. He's a weekend host on Fox. That's his experience. And have you seen the pictures of the tattoos, Ted?
I have.
They look extremely fascist. I'm not sure what the cross and the 4 crosses inside the 1 cross. And then he has the American flag with the AK-47 across it on his arm. I mean, this is just like, what the fuck? I mean, there's no other way to put this. And
the tattoo is important, actually, because you and I are both old enough to remember that tattoos, you used to not be able to have a visible tattoo when you joined the military. When we were kids, I don't think you could even have a non-visible tattoo when you joined the military, but you certainly couldn't have a visible tattoo. It had to be covered. And now they changed the rules to allow body ink. What you're referring to is a very large tattoo on his chest, one of many, as you allude to. It's called the Jerusalem Cross. It's a medieval symbol from the medieval Crusades. It's meant as a fuck you to Muslims, basically, and it's considered part of Christian nationalism. It's almost certainly when he got it, a symbol of Christian nationalism. So he was in trouble when he was in the military. He was, I think, a major, and he was called on the carpet by his superiors on the grounds that he was suspected of being a right-wing extremist. And as you know, the military's had a lot of problems with that over the years,
Sure.
where they had to, purge people from these right-wing, sort of white supremacist groups. And he was suspected of being one. And he never really kind of denied it. He kind of like laughed it off. But I mean, he's ish, I'd say.
Well, yeah. I mean, and like I said, the other tattoos. Now, I'm not sure if this is true of all the armed forces, because like naval guys traditionally have had tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
The dancing, hula girl on the forearm. I'm not sure why I'm showing you a forearm. I'm sure you and our viewers know what a forearm is. I have no tattoos there, but we did.
I have no tattoos at all.
Is that right?
That's in keeping with that's because as a devout Muslim, I am not allowed to desecrate
Is that true?
my body. And,
I didn't know. Is that true?
Also a devout Jew. If you're a devout Jew or Muslim, one of the many things that they have in common, no kidding aside, they have so much in common, it's like ridiculous. You're not supposed to get a tattoo if you're Jewish or Muslim. So, no, the reason I don't have a tattoo.
Jewish.
You know why I don't have a tattoo? I'll tell you why I don't have a tattoo.
Okay.
Because I can't imagine any graphic image that I would like that much that I would have to see it every day for the rest of my life.
Not even one of your own cartoons?
Especially not one of my own cartoons. And I've actually designed tattoos for people. By the way, that is available to you. Yeah, if you want me to do a tattoo for you, you can reach out to me through my website, rall.com, hit the contact button. The email comes straight to me. I'll do a tattoo for you. You have to pay me. I send you the art. You show it to the tattoo artist. They do it. A number of people have done it. They turned out really great. I mean, because my style is kind of like simple, like, yeah, it's not going to hurt as much as getting like one of your cross-hatched fuckers all over you. It's going to be like, ow. So mine's more abstract. So you want a simple drawing style, I think.
I have one tattoo. Can you guess where and what? Now let's not do
tramp
that.
Stamp.
Yes, it's a
hello, Ted Cruz. Never. You have to stop meeting this way.
It's actually.
I'm with stupid. What?
I was on a surf safari down in Australia with a couple of buddies. We had a van. We were going up and down the coast, and it was one of the guys' birthdays. So we went and had a nice meal. Wine may or may not have been involved.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's typical Australian, right? This street has some of the best restaurants in Sydney. It has like some of the best and highest regarded and finest jewelry stores in this country, and it has tattoo parlors. Okay. But so I ended up at one of those, and the one I could afford.
Every place has two tattoo parlors now.
Well, yeah, I mean, but this was back in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a while ago, and
so we're talking about a 33-year-old tattoo here.
Oh yeah, it looks like it too. Now it just looks like a Rorschach test. It can be two donkeys having sex, or it can be your mother. It just looks like this weird blue blur. But at the time, it's the a Chinese character for friendship, because friendship is very important to me, as you know. And so I had it. I was going to have it on my hand. I was going to have it on my arm. And I said, let's put it on my foot so nobody can see it. So I have a tattoo on my foot.
You're sure it says friendship, right? You know what
I thought. What the weirdest thing is
about to get to, right? There's all these stories about people who get Chinese characters written by evil Chinese tattoo artists.
We were flying out of the airport, flying back to the United States the next morning, and we're at the airport. I'm looking up at the signs, and they're in English. In Japanese and Chinese, I look up and the character looks for women's room, looks suspiciously what I'm going, shit. But it turned out that indeed it has been confirmed that it does stand for, it actually means comrade more than friendship. But I know what it means to me, but it was, that's the only tattoo.
It's more like friends than friendship.
Yes. And that's again, it's an important aspect of my life. It really and truly is. True.
I can vouch for that.
But I'll never forget.
You're a terrific friend, really.
Oh, thank you. I'll never forget waking up the next morning and rolling over it because they put a bandage on it and they wrap it in plastic.
Oh, were you like, oh?
Oh, I went, oh, fuck, what is that? And
Really?
then I remembered. And then I remembered. I went, and then I really went, oh, crap.
Really? Where was it? I think, did you say where you put it? Where part of
it's on my foot. It's on the top of my right foot.
Oh, I mean,
which
my would have hurt a lot, right?
Yes, my friends took a picture of me, so I'm like totally gapped out. This is again 1990, 91, and so I have the gap shirt and the shorts, the cargo shorts. I have my foot up on the little thing.
I remember how you used
the tattoo. Is this biker-looking guy who shaved his head with a tattoo that goes around his head and down his neck, and he's doing it. I'm looking at the camera, going like this, Ted. Literally, I'm going. There's a tear because it's flesh on bone. There's nothing.
There's
between.
No fat there. Yeah, no, I mean, my top of my feet hurt a lot just from like where my shoelaces are tied up on top. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even kidding.
Anyway, so that's a long story for us. So we're talking about the cabinet. Okay, have there been crappy? Listen, by the way, we should sort of go enumerate some of these choices, right? So the highlights you mentioned, Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Yes. Let me just stipulate that's not going to happen unless he rams everything through. We can talk about that later. He suggested that he wants he wants kind of like a rubber stamp. Trump. He wants everything to go through as a recess appointment. Basically, the Senate kicks off for a long recess. He runs through. You don't need to get Senate approval if you do it when the Senate is in recess. I don't know why you can't just do that in one day, do them all at the same time. I don't know, but whatever. He's saying take a long time and just do it. So it would be Matt Gaetz for AG, but that's not going to happen, right? I mean, I don't think so either.
I don't think you can get to 50 in the Senate.
The quote
even
from
with
many Republicans on and behind closed doors apparently is what? But Gaetz has already resigned from the House.
He had to
because he doesn't want that report to come out because
it would have come out today.
Yeah. Anyone who resigns because of a report coming out, you know pretty much what the report's going to say.
The report is not it's not an A. It's not an A. So,
it's not an A.
There
is an A hole.
Yeah. Mom is not going to be happy when she sees it. So yeah, that's an issue.
Okay,
so Gaetz is so there's Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. Personally, I don't have any problem with it, but I mean, she doesn't really have the relevant experience, but I don't really care because I feel like the intelligence community is too powerful as it is. So whatever, you can blow that up a little bit as far as I'm concerned. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be HHS, Health and Human Services. I actually have maybe a take that you might find surprising on that. I actually think it could be really positive. And that's the one I'm happiest about and most optimistic about.
Okay.
Pete Hegseth. Like, what is a Hegseth? I mean,
well, apparently a neo-Nazi.
Apparently, Dio. Shocking that he has that German last name. But he will be the defense. He'll be the defense chief. That's very fucking strange. I mean,
that's another one that will not get, unless Trump, who has asked, he wants to do recess appointments, and the Senate pretty much has to let him do that, and they're not going to let him do that on these. These are too important.
Well, I would think, right? Kristi Noem, we mentioned, the governor of South Dakota, who will be the what is she doing? She's like, she's Homeland Security, inexplicably. Very strange choice. I mean, I understand he had to give her something, but I would have been like, ambassador to Croatia,
give her an ambassadorship.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is show up and look hot, which she could do, and be charming, which I don't know if she can do. So whatever.
Send her someplace South Dakota kind of way, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. So these are some pretty weird choices. There's a few more, but these are definitely meant to, I mean, Scott, what do you think? What do you think is Trump's thinking? What is his,
Gaetz,
what is his list? What's on his mind? What are his priorities? Why would he do this?
I think initially, I thought that Gaetz was like a feint. I'm going to throw this guy out there. He's clearly going to get all the attention. You can what little investigative reporting is going on in this country, you can tell they're all going to go to that story, and then you can get the rest of your people through. But Tulsi Gabbard, I'm with you. National intelligence.
Marco Rubio for Secretary.
Rubio. Now that's a choice that bother me, because this is a guy who's been in the Senate for a number of terms. I've always respected his intelligence until he started to, suck up to Trump. But Secretary of Defense, a guy who is literally a weekend host on Fox News, that's his experience. That's where Trump has seen him and known him.
Mm-hmm. This is a job that defeated really able, very smart men like Robert McNamara and Donald Rumsfeld. They were not able to make those positions. I mean, I looked this up. You had mentioned the other day that the Pentagon had 1 million employees. Actually, that's not true. It has nearly 3 million employees. It's 2.8 million people. And that's not including the contractors who indirectly work for the Pentagon, right? I mean, it's literally the second largest employer on planet Earth. And it is, if you count every, all the subcontractors, it accounts for a substantial part of global GDP. I mean, the Pentagon is by far the biggest expense in the federal budget. It accounts for 54% of all federal spending when you include debt service on previous wars. It's just massive. There's over 1,200 military bases around the world. The Defense Department carries all the 5 military academies, which are basically universities, high-end universities, 4 defense intelligence departments. It's vast. It's incomprehensible. You could have worked there for 30 years and not really know all of it. And there are lots of people who just, it's such a massive bureaucracy. What you really need is you need a genius, and you need a genius of organization and vision. I don't know Pete Hegseth is, by all accounts, a smart guy. He went to Harvard on scholarship. He did serve in the military. He rose to the rank of major. I mean, I've watched him on Fox. He's certainly not dumb. But this is not dumb is not really the bar here.
Well, okay, so you asked the question, what's Trump's play here? Looking at this list, he's doing what he said he would do. He's putting loyalists in high-ranking positions. Mm-hmm. This reminds me very much, and excuse me and excuse our listeners and viewers, but there is a parallel here. When Hitler ascended to power and was starting to coalesce and consolidate his power, he put a lot of people in positions of authority that, on the face of it, had no business doing it. Their number one recommendation was that they were loyal to Hitler and to the Nazi Party. That was it. And that seems to be what we're going for here. We have Huckabee is the ambassador to Israel. And the funniest part of all this in the last 48 hours to me, and funny in a cynical, holy crap, cackling kind of cynicism, is the voters in not Ann Arbor, in Deerfield, Michigan, large Muslim population who many of whom voted for Trump. And now they're stunned. Ted, they're stunned that Trump is appointing these types of people this.
Are they really?
They say they are. Now, if they're that stupid, you know what? I think you should have your voter card revoked. You just shouldn't be able. If you're anyone who is surprised by these moves, anyone who is shocked, has got to be, like I said, you can't vote the next 2 elections. You can't vote. You just no, because if you voted for Trump and you're surprised that this is now happening, you shouldn't be. Trump has said that he's going to use the armed forces domestically, particularly in getting rid of and sending out what many have estimated to be in the neighborhood of 11 million migrants who are in the country, possibly illegally. Now, the other thing is when you have Latinos who voted for him get scooped up as well, because how efficient the federal government can so often be, Ted.
Oh, yeah.
But I think with the Hegseth, I think the play there is that this guy's going to do anything that the that President Trump will tell him to do, including sending troops to Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Fe, Phoenix, wherever they have to send them to begin exporting illegal immigrants. We're going to have camps. Just the sheer optics of this is going to be horrific. But it's the only thing I can figure why you would put these kinds of people in this position. I want to jump in real quick, Ted, because you and I love history, and this is going to be partially a history lesson for our listeners and our viewers. There have been people who are inexperienced, who've been appointed to these positions of authority and done excellent work. In fact, it struck me that two of our greatest presidents had no experience. George Washington, there had never been a president before him, and he did a pretty good job. Abe Lincoln served one term in the House of Representatives. That was his only political experience before he was elected president of the United States. And he ran a small law firm in Springfield, Illinois in the mid 1800s. That was it. And he did a pretty good job. But these guys, I mean, there wasn't the sprawling bureaucracy. And speaking of Lincoln, there's a list that you sent me the other day of the worst cabinet appointments. One of them that was not on the list was Simon Cameron. And if that name means nothing to you, then you aren't nearly the dork that you think you are. He was the first Secretary of War under Abraham Lincoln. And he was a political appointment. And he was awful. He finally got fired because he and some of his friends were selling blankets to the U.S. Army that were threadbare, or they didn't deliver them at all. They just cashed the checks. This was This was before, what's his name? I can see his beard, a manly beard, Ted. Lincoln, who was, no, it was, I want to say Stafford, but that's not it. And it's not Stanton, who was the Secretary of State. This was the cabinet of rivals that have been storied and written about. And he became Secretary of War and did an excellent job. He hated Lincoln and was actually a dick to Lincoln. To Lincoln's credit, he never held that against him, because prior to the war, he was in a massive law firm and they were doing some work with a railroad. Lincoln was one of the representatives of the railroad, so they brought him in as a junior partner, and he was just just awful to him. But at least he was honest, and he wasn't selling bad uniforms and bad equipment and bad rifles for a profit like Secretary Simon Cameron was. So there have been terrible choices. The other terrible choices on the list, real quick, many of whom they say Earl Butz, who was Secretary of Agriculture under Nixon, and later Gerald Ford. I'm not sure he was a terrible secretary. He was a racist asshole. There was that. John Mitchell as the Attorney General, and who really did have, worked in the law and was at least qualified to do it. Although, frankly, representing Richard Nixon must have been a little difficult, or at least being the legal mind in the Nixon administration. Donald Rumsfeld, your favorite, Ted, was Secretary of Defense a couple of times. Under Jerry Ford, and then later under George W. Bush. They had a couple, Alberto Gonzalez, Attorney General, who thought that civil liberties were kind of more of a suggestion in the Constitution. But they also have...
And torture maybe wasn't such a problem.
I mean, torture, come on, whiners. And then, of course, Albert Fall, who we all know as the Secretary of the Interior from 1921 to 1923. He was the Secretary of the Interior under Warren G. Harding, a good Ohio boy, by the way, and was one of the architects of the Teapot Dome scandal, which had Harding not died, and I actually think his wife did it in San Francisco, because Warren G. Harding had numerous mistresses, and there are stories. I mean, are you familiar with this story, Ted, about Harding during cabinet meetings? He would excuse himself and stoop his mistress in a broom closet.
What, you don't believe in like a break at work?
I think everyone deserves a break. I mean, and the cabinet meetings can be boring, especially when you really didn't care and you were thinking about your mistress. But anyway, and so Mrs. Harding refused to let there be a autopsy, and she was there, which was rare because they didn't travel together a hell of a lot, as you might imagine. But she was there when he, supposedly thud.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. There is some suspicion.
So you think she was poisoning was suspected? Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why you would say, no, he just died of natural causes. He was perfectly healthy yesterday. Yeah, it happens. But anyway, so Calvin Coolidge becomes president, and Teapot Dome goes away because he reappoints all these other guys had been either resigned or indicted. They left. He forms his own cabinet. And so let's not forget Secretary Fall, who actually, went to prison for the Teapot Dome scandal. But these guys, Ted, I've been babbling. Tell me what your thoughts are, because like I said, we haven't talked about this. I'm aghast, obviously. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you have to tell me, is my signal okay? I'm having
You're good. You're great. Yeah, you look strong.
So because you were a little bit in and out there before. Look, I think that in terms of advice and consent, the Senate really should insist on not confirming a few of these choices. Kristi Noem is unqualified. Pete Hegseth is unqualified.
Oh God, yes.
And I think it should not be along ideological. I don't think ideology should have anything to do with it. I mean, Donald Trump is entitled to his nominees. He won the election fair and square. Elections have consequences. Blah blah blah. He's allowed to do this, but not if you can't do the job. It's like any hiring decision. You can't hire Clovis as your cab driver because he doesn't have opposable thumbs and he can't reach the gas pedal. He's very cute, but it just won't work. Just like Hegseth is very cute. So I think we need. So I mean, the one that excites me, and I mentioned this earlier, was RFK Jr. For the simple reason that if he only does one thing that he's promised, and Trump has said he would agree with this, which is to adopt European level restrictions on preservatives in foods. It would be the most significant development in American public health in 100 years, since the advent of vaccinations. It would be absolutely just massive. I mean, it would save tens of millions of lives. 75% of Americans are currently classified as overweight or obese. That number would plunge off a rock. Anybody who's ever been to Europe knows that, you spend, say, 2 weeks there and you eat and drink like a pig, and you come back and you're like, wow, I lost a few pounds. And that's because the food's different. It's fresher, it's cleaner, it's not full of shit like ours is. So if they get that crap out of the food supply, something that should have happened decades ago, that by itself would be just, it's incalculable how important it is. In the same way that, like, the decision by former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg to institute a no smoking rule in the city, and that became the standard for the entire country, has saved so many American lives and improved our quality of life by making it, you can now go to a restaurant or a bar and not get cancer. So that's kind of awesome. So I think that, so RFK Jr., he cares about public health. I think it would be really wrong not to let him have a shot at this.
Really?
I think he's qualified.
I mean, so you don't think some of his other ideas?
He knows,
but his ideas. Well, okay, he's not. I'm not sure he's qualified. He's not a doctor. He doesn't work in that.
No, but he spent his entire life. It's like sort of like, would you, Scott Stantis, be qualified for a cabinet level department, cabinet level secretary of history? I'd be like, yes.
Okay.
Even though, well, where's Scott's history degree? He doesn't have one. Was he a professor at Oxford? No. But the point is, you've lived and breathed history your entire life. You love it. You know it. You have a strong command of it, and you understand what it means. better than most professional historians, I would say. So, or as well. So I think in the same way, RFK Jr. has been an environmental journalist and a public health dork for most of his entire life. And one of the things I admire about him is the stuff that people hate about him, is that he's willing to ask questions about like, I don't have a dog in this fight. I like vaccinations. For a long time, I was the most illegally vaccinated COVID patient in America. Right? I was seeking out COVID vaccines in dark alleys, but I just don't think
you really were.
I was. I was. So, but I mean, look, there's all this concern, and it's not completely unfounded. That children have been getting autism as a result of the mercury used to store vaccines. Okay, I don't know if that's true. I have no fucking idea. But it makes my teeth itch, to quote my friend Scott, whenever someone says we should be asking these questions.
Yes,
it's not worth an investigation. We shouldn't look into it. We shouldn't hire a bunch of really smart scientists to figure it out. Like, we should.
I know, but he has said some nutty stuff in the past, some stuff that's like, it really does make you scratch your head. Like COVID was engineered not to affect Jews. That's one. The whole thing about vaccines, yes. And I think asking those questions is absolutely, I think it's criminal not to ask those questions. But when the responses come back, so far the information we have doesn't cause these problems. We've eradicated some horrific diseases: polio, whooping cough, measles. And that, that speaks volumes for our species. But then they go crazy, and you have, Ted, you're pixelated, and I think you're frozen. Ted, you there? Oh, Ted.
Yeah, I'm aware. It should be a little better now, maybe.
A little better. That is so weird. So the New York,
so annoying.
So somebody, the internet coming into Manhattan he's like doing like a water hose. They just kind of close it like that, right? And then they go, ha ha. Okay, you're clear now.
Yeah, well, that's right. Okay.
Well, but my point is that RFK had said some strange things and has some strange ideas. But like you said, I have no qualm with you asking questions. You know what? The latest discussion, and of course the mainstream media and the traditional Harris voter, such as they are, have rolled their eyes out and is questioning fluoride in our water. And this is a fascinating issue, because initially I thought, that's horseshit. Oh, come on, man. I mean, look, tooth decay had a significant, profound effect on tooth history, or tooth decay, tooth hygiene. Our oral hygiene has improved significantly because we have it in there. However, Ted, did you know it has no regulations? That is to say, the federal government doesn't say, when you put the test strip in the water, the drinking water, before it goes in the pipe, the fluoride has to be 0.004%. I'm making that number up, folks, so don't quote me, but just that's it. They didn't do it. They have some guy. They tell some guy named Earl. They give him a bucket of this stuff and say, okay, you have to spread this out over a week. Earl wants to get to his weekend, so he just dumps all of it in the water.
Dumps it all in at once.
Yeah, and so
that is how it works.
Well, let me throw in my, and I've asked this question, and I ask it half facetiously. Ted, you're freezing up and breaking up. And now you're frozen. You look lovely.
Anyway, keep going. Keep talking.
Well, I'm just saying that with fluoride now, they're saying that there's some suspicion that too much fluoride, can hurt in vitro fetuses and affect intelligence. And I'm thinking that, now couple that with my questioning of that we have been very remiss in replacing lead pipes in our system. There are over 100 years. Some of them should have been replaced over 100 years ago, Ted. And I'm just kind of wondering if, that some historians say that lead pipes in Rome fell to its fall, that it diminished their cognitive abilities. I'm thinking, okay, we got lead pipes. We got way over fluoridated water in the pipes, making stupid babies. fuck, that explains it.
Well, I mean, the thing is the fluoridation thing. Again, look, I grew up with fluoride in my water, and I've only ever had one cavity in my life. So obviously it worked for me. I was also militant about brushing my teeth, and I never really liked candy, so that helps too. But I mean, the fluoridation theory is really kind of crazy when you hear about it. I mean, basically the best thing would be to apply the fluoride directly to your teeth. But because instead of having people do that, they have to dump it into the water in order to get a high enough concentration of fluoride in the water to passively fluoridate, to have an effect against tooth decay, you have to put in such a shit ton of it in there that it basically is a toxin. So, people who are complaining about fluoridated water, like, they have a point, right? Let's just say this merits study. Yes. And again, like a lot of times we've been told, don't ask these questions. If you ask these questions, you're fucking paranoid, delusional, like crazy, like crackpot, all that stuff. And it's like, when someone tells me not to ask questions, I say, fuck off.
How many times, Ted, were you called? I mean, and this is one of those points of, frankly, respect I have for Ted, who opposed the Iraq war from the onslaught, from the beginning. When the W. Bush administration was driving us into it, I was on the other side and I was wrong. But how many times have you been called a crackpot for that, Ted? How many times have you been called? How many times were you and I castigated because we had the temerity to ask, is Joe Biden cognitively able to execute the office of president of the United States? And for 3.5 years, 3.5 long fucking years, you and I were screamed at. How dare you question Joe is as good as he's ever been? Well, if that was the case, then oh boy. And then they had that debate. Then he had the debate with Trump, and that happened. Ted, before I want to turn the tables on you a little bit and ask you what you think the end game for Trump is on these appointments, because people are going nuts.
I agree with you about like the loyalty thing. I mean, clearly Trump wants people who will do what he says. He's been very clear about it. He said, I don't want people who are going to be, sassy. I want them to, to carry out their orders. That goes for my generals as well. That's what he wants. I would want the same thing and you probably would too, if you were president of the United States. So his motivation is not really like a meritocratic, let's find the best possible person for the job.
No.
I personally would, if I became president somehow, unluckily for the country, I would probably choose a bunch of academics for a lot of these jobs. People like top, like, I don't understand why, I mean, he's too old now, but I don't understand why Paul Krugman was never, the leading Nobel Prize economist at the New York Times, why he never got a gig in like the Obama administration, like as say head of the Fed or, Commerce Department or something like that. Why didn't that Treasury? Why did that not happen? I don't know. But I would be making choices like that. Trump is he's being a disruptive force. Some of it is just about rewards. The Kristi Noem thing, that's just like, I have a job, you just do it. Marco Rubio, he's not really, I don't know, he could be defense secretary, really. I think he could. I don't understand why state. I think often state and defense, they do a reversal. Remember under Bush, where the military guy, Colin Powell, was at state, and then the civilian, like, technocrat was at defense. It was like, that's weird, but I guess, it reinforces civilian control of the military. But this is about, he has a short bench too. I mean, there's not a lot of people who want to work for Donald Trump. You and I have discussed this in the past. He throws you under the bus. It often doesn't end well. It might end in a federal indictment. It might end in a prison cell. Ask Rudy Giuliani. It doesn't always go well. So I think, it's kind of super thankless. And so he probably didn't have a lot of people to choose from.
Let me ask you a crazy question. If Donald Trump called you this afternoon and says, Ted, we've never seen eye to eye, but I think you're the best. Everyone says so. Everyone says you're the best mind. I want to appoint you, Secretary of Veterans Affairs. How about it, pal? You want to do it? What would you'd say yes, I assume.
Well, honestly, I would not say yes to that because I don't know anything about Veterans Affairs, and I know
well, that makes you perfectly suitable for this cabinet.
I have walked away. I have turned down jobs on the grounds that I was not qualified, and nor did I think that I could possibly get up to speed quickly enough to do a good job. That's but let's just say that offer we're about
ambassador to France. How's that?
That's a pretty sweet gig. Yeah. Unlikely that you're going to get in trouble. The food's good. You're living in a nice house. Sounds pretty sweet. That would be a no-brainer. But if it was like sort of like special envoy to Taliban Afghanistan, I'd be like, honestly, he needs me. I can do this. I know that I could do some good. I could reopen relations with Afghanistan. We should do that. I have some connections with that government I had in the past. I could reestablish them. That could be done. So like you have to, if your president calls, no matter who your president is, I feel like it's your duty as an American to seriously consider taking that job and doing whatever you can. What do you think?
Oh, I'd say yes immediately. No, I mean, and I despise Donald Trump. I think he's a wretched human being, but I also believe, as you do, serving, if your president calls, you say yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the feeling that a lot of people had. But, I mean, it'll be super interesting because a lot of these, kind of like he's being accused of blowing things up. His election is seen as like a reflection of irresponsibility by the voters, that they were willing to blow up the entire system. And, I think maybe elites in the media are overrating how great the existing system is. And the American people are very unhappy, and they have felt that, left, right, and middle, they have felt that the system's been unresponsive to their needs. They all have different needs, right? But I mean, this is a country where, you can't send your kid to college unless you're a millionaire. If you need a serious operation, it's going to cost millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's like going to see the doctor. You have to be really worried about your financial health more than your physical health. I mean, these are big problems, and neither party's been very good at addressing them. And a lot of people have just been saying, yeah, blow it up. I don't know. I mean, I'm not looking forward to the Trump administration's, authoritarian leadings, and nor it's just sort of like trying to carry out some really brutal policy goals like mass deportations. That said, the bureaucracy is big and intransigent and unwieldy. The deep state is a real thing. I don't think he's really going to get as much done as he would like or as we would fear.
Do you think these are the worst cabinet appointments?
No.
In the history of our republic?
No, you named a bunch of really bad ones. I would have to say I would agree with you about Alberto Gonzalez. What a piece of shit. Let's not forget on the list that we exchanged earlier, Michael Brown. Heck of a job, Brownie. He was
not cabinet position. He was head of FEMA.
He was director of FEMA. Yeah, that's right. I think FEMA is is that not a that's just an agency, right?
Yeah, it's not under. I forget what it's under, but it's not a cabinet level position.
Well, there was James Watt, who was the Secretary of the Interior, who basically seemed to view the national parks as a glorious place where oil wells should be, from sea to shining sea. And
who doesn't want to go see buffalo? Who doesn't want to go to the Grand Canyon and see buffalo and oil rigs?
It's a good point. And of course, we also have to say Robert McNamara, because he was tasked both under the Kennedy and the Johnson administrations he had this incredible analytical mind, but he couldn't, and he kept getting us into Vietnam deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't think it's unfair to say that if he hadn't done that, he convinced LBJ to go deeper and deeper. If he had gone the other way, we might not have lost 58,000 men and women in Vietnam, and we might not have lost 2 million Vietnamese.
Real quick, historic conjecture. I'm not sure. I mean, JFK voiced his concerns about involvement in Vietnam and the deepening involvement of U.S. troops. I'm still not convinced that he would have pulled out.
Oh, I'm not convinced of that at all. Yeah.
Okay.
No, JFK was he tended to go along with every harebrained military scheme. Look at the Bay of Pigs, right?
I'm laughing just because it was so like badly done, and like his whole speech was, well, I guess fucked that one up.
Yeah. and then there's a Mitchell Palmer, AG during the late Wilson administration, who is famous for the raids named after him, the Palmer raids, who basically were led by a young little pipsqueak named J. Edgar Hoover. And the Palmer raids were basically about going after communists or people who we just sort of say are communists and rounding them up. And in some cases, these were U.S. citizens born in the United States who were expelled. They were rendered stateless by the Wilson administration and chucked out of the United States, of their country of birth, totally illegally, totally unconstitutionally. There's no basis for that at all. We don't have that in our law. He was a real piece of shit. So he would be way up there. Is this you mentioned Reagan's picks. I thought Reagan's picks were pretty shitty. It was John Edwards, who was the Secretary of Energy, right? Was that his name? Edwards. I forget his first name, but he was the Secretary of Energy. He was a dentist. Okay, like I don't know what fucking qualifications he had to become Secretary of Energy. Energy's pretty important. This is right after the energy crisis in the mid 70s. Yeah. James Watt, the aforementioned James Watt, I know he was, and then of course, who could ever forget? I'm in charge here. Alexander Haig, who was kind of a nut. There was Caspar Weinberger, Captain.
Although to his credit, I'm going to jump in real quick and say to his credit, what role did he have under the Nixon administration? He's the one who kept Nixon from, or at least the orders from Nixon, that when he was spiraling into the abyss from, executing many. I think he was chief of staff for Richard Nixon, and Al Haig is who we're talking about, and. But then during the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, he famously went in front of the press and said, look at the line of succession. It's the president, the vice president, then me. And it's just like, well, no, that's not how it is anymore. Not since the 25th Amendment. It's the president, vice president, speaker, majority leader of the Senate, and then goes to the pro tems in both houses, and then gets to the cabinet. And so he looked kind of nutty when he did that, and left. He left. If I'm remembering correctly, he left as Secretary of State not long after that, because it just came off as so profoundly nuts. But I'm trying to think back into the 20th century when you had guys who were, and they were all men, of course, who were appointed to cabinets who, I don't have the specific names in front of me, but, Grant's cabinets, and when they had spoils system, and when they were giving, deeds on federal land for the railroads and for other agricultural or hunting or whatever, the Grant administration, there were some real stinkers in that cabinet as well.
And Adjourn, by the way, also. In that cabinet. I mean, there were 4 secretaries of the Treasury, 5 AGs. I mean, there were 2 terms, right? But still, over those 8 years, Secretary of War, now Defense, there were 4 of those. He couldn't even keep a Postmaster General. I mean,
by the way, under President Bill Clinton, he had one Attorney General, Janet Reno, who liked ripping children out from closets and didn't mind storming compounds and catching them on fire, killing women, children, and crazy cult people.
Well, and wasn't she Ruby Ridge too?
Yeah. So she had no.
She was special.
There's a word for it. Oh my gosh. I mean, so there have been stinkers, but I swear, Ted, I've never seen anything quite like that. I'm thinking of the team of rivals. We mentioned Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. We're made up ostensibly of former competitors for the Republican nomination. His Secretary of the Treasury, his Secretary of War, his Secretary of State, all of whom were really front runners for the nomination, and he beat them out and then made them into his cabinet. And he thought a cabinet of wise, learned men confronting each other and competing with each other made for better policy. And he wasn't wrong. Obviously, it turned out pretty damn good. Well, that was 4 rough years, but then it turned out okay. I do wonder, had Lincoln lived, how a Reconstruction would have looked under him. I think it would have looked very different. Obviously, his vice president was a piece of shit, Andrew Johnson, who hated black people with a passion.
And that was part of. He was such a racist piece of shit that was part of the call to impeach him. A bunch of rich, old, landed white guys in 1868 were like, this guy is too fucking racist for us, and they were
well 65
him. Right, 1865, right.
But, yeah. Well, and he was a piece of he made things so much worse, because obviously right after the war, the plantation owners kind of liked being plantation owners, the ones whose plantations were still standing, and they liked having slaves working for them. So the nicest thing they did was not tell them that they were free. That was the nicest thing. You could walk things back from there. I'm trying to think of, like I said, the early cabinets, nobody had any experience. Now storied because it's a popular musical, was Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury. He had no experience during that, although he did handle accounts when he was a teenager, which is amazing, of a trading house down in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands.
Right, where he was from, right?
Right. But coming to the United States, he had no experience as Secretary of the Treasury, but he established a monetary system and national debt and how it worked towards building the national economy. It was brilliant. You couldn't have expected that. These were all really learned, smart guys, but you couldn't have expected anything from them because they had zero experience, because conversely, there wasn't a country prior to that. So, but moving forward, you just had some guys who were bad, some guys who are worse. And these people, I'm sorry, like you said, I don't think Gaetz gets confirmed. And I don't think that, how do you pronounce his name? Hegseth?
Hagrid.
Hagrid? Yeah, Hagrid will not be defense secretary. He's going to go through the hearings and they're going to go,
Hegseth,
this guy.
Hegseth.
Because especially on committees like defense, many of the senators really get immersed in this stuff and they love it.
Mm-hmm.
And they know it backwards and forwards, and they know, they love weapons, obviously.
Right, they do.
Backwards and forwards. So they say, so the M65 tank, what do you think of that? And this guy's going to go,
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think he's going to be really prepared, and I think he could maybe get through the confirmation hearings.
Oh,
but
I don't think so.
But he's going to fucking fail. On the job. There's just no question.
But to Ted's chagrin and my horror, he is going to agree to use U.S. troops on our land, in the United States domestically, to enforce the edicts.
I would be really remiss if I didn't ask you about the new Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh, good God! First of all,
led by Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, which Elon Musk helpfully remind us the acronym is Doge, DOGE, and he's a huge proponent of the Dogecoin or Dogecoin, depending on how you pronounce it, cryptocurrency. So
the douche likes the Doge.
The Doge. The Doge died. The Doge got an obituary in the New York Times. That you knew. I'm not even kidding.
This is
something that I will probably not get.
Ted, you and I'm a little older, so I can say 45 years, but you can say 40 years you've been covering government, and especially the executive wing of the American government. How many times has there been this committee set up of people?
Oh God.
We can't
Al
even
Gore,
count.
In the 90s.
Who I think got rid of 100 jobs. Because these things are not created out of whole cloth. I'm not defending the federal government. I've mentioned this several times. I'll mention it again. The biography of Calvin Coolidge that was a bestseller a couple of years ago. It's really worth a read. I sent it to you, Ted. I'm sure you've already finished it, along with watching.
Well, I do. I'm going to read that book.
You are going to watch that movie.
I will, before I die. With God
It's
as
The
my
Passion of
witness.
Joan of Arc, the silent film version, and I've sent it to Ted. Told him he needs to watch it. It's considered by most to be one of the greatest films ever made. Ted steadfastly refuses to watch it. I don't know why.
About it. Well, because it's a silent film.
Okay. Anyway, where were we going with this?
I don't know. I was going to go off on a tangent and ask you if you were going to watch Scorsese's Saints movies.
No, is he making Saints movies?
Yeah, he's making a movie about Christian saints. Apparently, it's already done and it looks pretty good from the previews I've seen.
Oh, well, I mean, he's a good director, so yes, I will watch it.
Like, deflect. Change topic. See, I'm ready to run for office.
Anyway, we should probably tie things up here anyway, so I won't go on my tangent. Worst cabinet ever. Yeah, these choices will be, and if they get through, it will be a catastrophe because these are important positions. No, he still has many, many more to go. He
does. We don't know what's going to happen at energy. We don't know what's going to happen at commerce. Many, many more are to come.
Well, they have. I mean, there are some names that are going to pop up that you're going to scratch your head. Paxton, who's the Attorney General of Texas, who is he missed being impeached by a vote. And this is the guy who they're trying to, Robeson, now the guy who was convicted of shaken baby syndrome, which has been proven that that's not a thing. His family members, people directly involved in the case, all, including the prosecutor, say he shouldn't be, not only should he not be executed, he shouldn't be in prison. But the Supreme Court of Texas, Teddy, sitting down, because you'll be shocked to learn that the Supreme Court of Texas ruled that many members of the Texas legislature tried to, oh gosh, I'm having a total mind fart here. What's it called when a legislator or a court asks you to appear?
Subpoena.
Yeah, they subpoenaed Robeson to show up at a hearing 4 days, and they scheduled it for 4 days after his scheduled execution. So they said that he can't be executed because he's been subpoenaed. The Supreme Court of Texas says, no, we're not falling for that one. You got to kill. We like the killing. We support the killing. We want the killing. We need the killing. But Paxton is the guy who's pushing this. During the last year's Texas State Fair, this is all salient, there was a number of shootings. So this year, the State Fair said, okay, we're going to have metal detectors. You can't bring a gun into the Texas State Fair, which is we're going to look at cows. We're going to look at pigs. We're going to eat a lot of fried food. That's what the Texas State Fair is about. You don't need to shoot anything. But the Attorney General, Paxton, has worked feverishly to lift the ban on firearms going into the State Fair. I'm not kidding. This is a priority. This guy, Paxton, will be named something. He obviously won't be AG, but I suspect it'll be something else. I'm wondering about like labor, who will get that. Certain. Yeah, you're going to have some, and I think you can have some surprising appointments, but I want the best and the brightest.
Ooh, I could see Sean Fain, the union president.
From the Teamsters.
I could see him getting the nod for the Secretary of Labor.
Well, he'd have to take a pay cut.
Yeah, that's true. But he's got those bricks of shrink wrapped hundreds under his bed next to Jimmy Hoffa's body.
Yeah, people forget the Teamsters endorsed Ronald Reagan in the 80s too. Mm-hmm. So this was nothing really particularly new. Well, okay. On that note, Ted, where can we see all things Rawlian?
Please go. We will play all of these in our awesome clip to follow in about a minute. But you can go to raw.com. You can go to whowhatwhy.org. Right. You can go to the TMI show with me and Manila Chan Monday through Friday on YouTube and on Rumble. And Scott, where can we find all things Scottian?
Well, as you said, that's all at the end of the show. I forgot about that, Ted. I'm sorry. So we're kind of repeating ourselves, but just go to Go Comics, type in Scott Stantis. You'll see all things that are really just Stantinian. But what we don't mention is Center Clip, which is this sort of mini podcast, 30 seconds to longer than 5 minutes. Both Ted and I post to it. You can find it at Newsweek. You can find it at allsides.com, or just go to centerclip.com and stream it there. I love it. I really enjoy doing it. It really gives me that relief during the day when I feel like, well, I don't want to do a cartoon, but I can mention something. I can talk about this. So that's Centerclip, or centerclip.com. So Ted, thank you this is fun.
It was fun. All right, everybody. So that the verdict is in. Scott has ruled. Worst cabinet ever.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've only just begun.
Good God.
All right. See you soon.
Pray
Have a good
for
weekend,
us.
people.
Bye.